You're now watching the Danny Mac Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
Yes, we're going to get into the Bears full steam with Tom Thayer. That's why he's on the show. But let's start with one of his former teams that's winning, Notre Dame in the national title. A week from Tuesday night, Tom, it has to feel good. It's been a little bit more than 10 years since the Irish have played on the national stage for all the marbles. Hopefully it goes better this time than it did for Manti Te'o and company.
Well, you know, Danny Mac, after the NIU game, Northern Illinois University game, I had to be resuscitated because I was totally off the bandwagon. I was dragging behind as a lifeless body. And then all of a sudden I saw things starting to turn around and I jumped back on the bandwagon. And, you know, I have a good feeling of what Marcus Freeman has been able to do, how he's been able to keep the attention captured of a bunch of college kids that are being tugged in so many different directions because of NIL. And so I'm really proud of what he's done as a coach and what the kids have committed to as a team.
They certainly bounced back from that tough game against Northern, and the atmospheres on all of the college campuses for the first round was electric, even though the games weren't very good. Tom, I like college football. I always have, but man, I don't think this is old man yelling at cloud. Too much change too rapidly. It's tough to be a fan. Some of these guys, because of COVID, are on their third schools in 5-6 years. It's too much change too quickly, and conference realignment makes it goofy too.
Yeah, I agree with you, 100%. And I'm kind of more of an older curmudgeon sitting up in that booth, looking down on the field. And, listen, I don't care about the NIL money. That is something that these guys got to work out and figure out how that's best going to work. I feel sorry for the kids that are going out there and busting their hump and they're not getting anything. They're, back like the old school guys of just getting, being fortunate enough to get the scholarship. And then you see guys that like Arch Manning, who's a backup, and he's making more money as a backup NIL player than I made in my NFL career. But the thing that disappoints me too, Mac, is the lack of conscience of the leaders of college football, because these kids that are wearing shorts now and they have no coverage in their knees. And when I was coming into college, the knee braces became the vogue. And so now the coaches are going to say, you guys are going to start wearing these knee braces and they're going to prevent all knee injuries. Well, you probably had more hip and ankle injuries because your knee was stable. And now they're letting these kids wear shorts because that's what the kids want to do. If I was a college coach, my tackling would be from knee to thigh. And I don't want to hurt kids, but I do want to bruise them. I do want to dent them a little bit. And so if you're going to allow these kids to think that it's safe not to wear knee pads, then I'm going to challenge your willingness and, your ferociousness in running the ball when guys are coming at you knee high. And if I get my helmet onto your kneecap and I create a knee bruise, hey, it's part of because that elder statesman, that leader, that college president, that coach, that NCAA leader says it's okay nowadays if you guys don't want to wear knee pads because that's what we want you guys to do.
It is shocking you bring this up. I never thought I would talk about this in front of a microphone, but I mentioned this to my wife last week. I said, look at these kids, how much they're exposing the legs. I'm surprised the schools allow it. The conferences and the NCAA allows it. But it's fashion, like you said, and you got to keep the kids happy.
Well, crap. It's the leadership that they set the rules. They don't let the kids set the rules. And you go back and you look at some of these guys and how high up they're wearing their pants now. They have these minimally helpful thigh pads in there, and then they have nothing covering their knee. If I was a parent, I would say that's unacceptable. If I was a coach, I would say that was unacceptable. And so that's okay. That's my old guy curmudgeon feelings as of right now. And, let's hope for the safety for all these kids, but I would challenge them if I was coaching.
I was surprised to hear the ratings were so down for the semifinal games. I guess the Notre Dame Penn State game drew an audience of 17 million, which sounds good, but the previous year, the time slot occupied by Michigan and Alabama was 27 million. And I don't know if that's a Penn State thing because people who are out west just don't give a damn about Penn State. But I was surprised because it seems like fans were ready to. I mean, the Irish are a can't miss from a rating standpoint. I was shocked by those numbers.
Yeah, Thursday 6:30 Midwest, 7:30 East Coast, and so on, and with all the other time frames, with the LA fires and everything that's going on around the world, was that the most optimal time to have these games kick off to attract that audience? So I guess there'd probably be a little bit more in-depth studies in the future. Is this something that should be a 2:30 Saturday afternoon kickoff to get as much audience participation as you can, rather than people traveling home from work or still in the midst of their work day? So I think there'll be a lot of investigative work on that.
I got one more question that's not Bears related, and we'll get to why everybody is here to hear you talk about the future. But I get a kick out of, and maybe I'd like to think I wasn't like this for 30 some years, because, when you push yourself away a little bit, as I have these last 4 years or so, and consume sports radio, sometimes you shake your head and think, man, did I act like that? Did I say stupid shit like that all the time? Yesterday's vibe was this: Mike Tomlin's got to go. How in the world do you employ Mike Tomlin? The guy always spits the bit in January. Factually, he has lost a lot of January games. But you know what? Look around the league at how many head coaches you truly trust to handle your room. Mike Tomlin is in everybody's top 3. Media and fans just annoy the crap out of me the older I get, Tom.
I agree. Listen, go back and you look at Mike Tomlin's record with Roethlisberger in the playoffs and then without him. They've been searching for a quarterback since Roethlisberger has been out of there. And if you bring Mike Tomlin into a team that says, okay, I need my culture to change, I need accountability for my team, and I have a quarterback in place, I think he could be the next Andy Reid. When you look at what Andy Reid failed to do in Philly and what he's been able to do in Kansas City, the quarterback is the centerpiece of any football team. And if you have a quarterback in place and then you're bringing Mike Tomlin in to kind of turn that weight room and that physical commitment on a weekly basis, I think he could be a really good choice for you.
The weight room is a big problem with the Bears, isn't it?
I think the weight room is a big problem with all of the NFL. I don't think you have the strong guys in the NFL across the board. I think if I was in charge of a football team and I had my offense and defensive linemen that were carrying the weight around like they're carrying, I would have strength requirements for them. And they don't necessarily have to live up to them, but they have to work towards them. And I was thinking, last night watching the Tampa game, and I was looking at Vita Vea, the defensive tackle they have, who I love him. I love his energy. I love his style. But when I look at him on the field, to me, he doesn't give me the reflection of a Dan Hampton or a Steve McMichael or the guys that I was around for my time. He doesn't look like a Bruce Smith or a Reggie White or Keith Millard or some of these other guys. So when I think about the weight room and I think about its role and its importance in the sport of football, I think it contributes to health. I think it contributes to wins on the field. I think it contributes to fourth quarters. And so strength, I'm always going to be a big proponent of the weight room.
I understand why you would. The weight room made you. It made Steve McMichael the player he was. It took Mongo a few years to catch on, and the weight room was one of the biggest reasons he finally got his chance with Buddy Ryan after spectating for 2 years. he was a productive player, but Andrew Billings needs to get his butt in the weight room too. He's 30 pounds overweight, and people pounded me in the comment section of my podcast this season for being critical of him. And it's like, look, if you only want to play 20% of the snaps, that's fine. Be 400 pounds. You're going to eat your way out of the league like Gilbert Brown and some others did. I need a better fitness level out of their best fundamental defensive lineman next year.
Listen, it's kind of funny you bring up Billings, because Billings is one of the guys that I think spends the most time in the weight room. And when you talk about fitness and strength, that's two different things. Fitness is the ability to go 100% the entire game. And that falls into what they're requiring you to do in practice, the conditioning that they're putting you through to make sure that you're at that fitness level to be that fourth quarter competitor. That the weight room, Billings is probably the strongest guy on the Bears. And so I never thought, he's got to be in the weight room. What he needs to do is he needs to be that influence where he's bringing other guys in the weight room, where, McNeil started this thing, the Friday afternoon pump club, where we would go in the weight room and we'd all be doing curls and stuff like that. Just not because it's a necessity at that part of the week. It's the camaraderie that it created. Because when you're having guys in there like T-Rock, Tim Ryan, or you're having the McNeils, or you're having guys like Neil Anderson, or you're having fun with guys like Jim Morrissey, all these guys that would come and want to be a part of the Friday afternoon pump club, it was the conversation, the fun. It was just the whole part of the weight room that was probably the most important part of it, is the camaraderie it created.
Mm-hmm. Boy, how can a team not have camaraderie with 8 captains? And I heard you telling Sylvian Waddle this, I think, a few weeks ago, and I had the same thought in August. Why in the hell do you need 8 of them, and where is your big guy? Where is your offensive lineman or defensive lineman? Not one animal among the bunch has earned captaincy. That's problematic by itself.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If but that's kind of goes to the need of the team, is the fact that you got to build this thing from the inside out. It's the old Jim Finks philosophy. And if you don't have a couple alpha males on each side of the football, then you're really missing some key components of success. Because when you have guys like Hampton and McNeil, and I'm not leaving out Richard or Hartenstein or any of these other guys, because they're as alpha as anybody else, or the guys on the offensive side of the ball, every one of us, including Dick Stanfeld. Those are the type of guys that you want to have swaggering around the locker room, that are, showing what the sport means to them, how important their performance is, not only individually, but as a position. And so, that's kind of made me sad when I thought about all the captains that they have, that there wasn't a couple offensive and defensive linemen in that role. But you know what? We never had captains with Ditka, because the only captain that we needed was Ditka. And that's the way that we went about our business. We had guys that we kind of teased, and we called them glorified exercise leaders. But that's when the guys stood in front of the team and they led the calisthenics, the pre-practice warm-up. Nowadays, they kind of get in a configuration where the strength coaches and the conditioning coaches put them through their warm-up paces.
Yeah. Oh, I miss the days of the jumping jacks. Ready, gentlemen? Exercise. Oh, I want to watch North Dallas 40 now and see Jim
Singletary,
Langer.
though, he would always lead us in the push-ups, and he would always down, up, hold it there. And then we'd have to hold in that upright position, down, up, hold it there. And we'd only do probably 5 or 10 push-ups, but Singletary was always the leader. And he just created that instant of instigation, because guys were tired, guys were ready to go, and he would be that push-up leader that would just he would kick off the start of practice. Guys would be standing up, grabbing their helmets, complaining, bitching and moaning at him, but it was for the betterment of the team.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions about the coaching search, and I'm going to keep them short. Why is it necessary to interview as many guys as the Bears are interviewing?
That's a good question. I think that's the way the NFL is nowadays. They got to collectively interview as many guys as they possibly can, whether they're trying to get some information from guys that have already been head coaches or try to really feel out guys that haven't been a head coach yet to see where they stand. What is their offense and defensive philosophy? How do they feel about special teams? If you're a defensive guy, what does the defense need? If you're an offensive guy, what do you need for this offense to be at a Super Bowl division-winning caliber? There's so many questions. And then you're trying to race against time because as the NFL season winds on and you have teams that have records that are probably indicating that they're going to need a new head coach, then everybody's getting in line to start interviewing their head coach as quickly as possible. And you saw what the New England Patriots have already done with Mike Vrabel. Let him get a couple of interviews, and then as soon as you get him in the building, you hire him. It's the Bears asking for permission to interview Mike McCarthy, and even though Jerry Jones said, "Yeah, go out and get talk to other teams," as soon as you ask for that permission, he doesn't give you the permission. So sometimes you're up against an uphill battle of time. Sometimes you're fighting other owners for guys that they've already have their sights set on. So you have to interview a number of candidates to make sure that when that guy stands in front of you and you believe in him, you can pull the trigger, or the guy that you missed out on, who is candidate number two.
When you started describing the interview process, you were asking football questions, and that's something people in HR shouldn't be asking a potential head coach. And the word is the Bears have a ton of people involved in this process. I mean, double-digit number of people. And I know in previous interviews, here I am asking a long question again, Chet. Bruce Arians was put off by the absence of football people. Why am I not being asked questions about the roster the way it's constructed? Scott Hagel might be fine to tell me how to handle a post-game news conference, but nobody was asking the right questions. Why in the world would you involve people who aren't football people?
Well, I would only put them in front of that secondary questioning committee if you cleared the first hurdle, if I was Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren. If I said, man, this guy told me every single answer that I want to hear more of. I really liked his philosophical thinking of what he's going to do for Caleb Williams in the offense. I like the staff that he mentioned in front of me, and I like this guy, and I like his background. And then if he clears the first hurdle, sometimes there's questions that non-football people in the business side of the building can ask them that you maybe as a general manager, that's not the first thing that crossed your mind. Because if I was interviewing a head coach, the last thing I would be concerned about would be, where do you want to live? Or, how quickly can you be here if we do hire you? Or I want to hear about your football knowledge. I want to hear about your staff, and I want to hear about the development of your background in football. And who did it include? Who is your influences into being why you're sitting here in front of me? And why are you sitting here in front of me? What gives you the qualifications to be here interviewing as an NFL head coach?
It's been suggested, and it makes sense, Tom. The uncertainty of Ryan Poles' future could dissuade a potential candidate. If the right candidate, the guy you really wanted, said, I'd like to come to Chicago, you got the quarterback who's going to take you there, but I need my own personnel guy. Would you be willing to acquiesce, regardless of the head coaching candidate? Would you be willing to let your next head coach essentially choose his GM?
Well, that I think that's a decision for Kevin Warren. I think because they have a president in place who is probably the alpha decision maker inside that building. And so if Kevin Warren feels that he's seen enough out of Ryan Poles to believe that he is the future of the GM of this football team. If you're interviewing a head coaching candidate and his only requirement of being hired for that job is bringing in his own personnel person, maybe you see if he can fit into the building with Ryan Poles. But I do think that probably the level of the decision-making process is probably Kevin, and then Ryan on he's the football decision maker in that building. And maybe if we knew a little bit more behind the scenes, that we know that Ryan is secure in his future and he's going to make the decision and he's going to tell the head coaching candidate that. But I got to believe, Danny Mac, if there's a guy out there that is getting considered for his first time head coaching opportunity, he might have to leave a lot of things in his wake and take advantage of this opportunity because it may never come again. So there's a lot of decisions that may confuse you as I'm asking you the question, but the ultimate consideration is, how can I get this head job? And what do I have to do to make concessions to get this job?
When you look at how much money teams spend in free agency, and free agents they know are stopgap guys, but you have to be willing to pay sometimes for them. Like Ngakoue a year ago, got $15 million and he had 4 sacks. Why in the world would you not pay a head coach 12 or 14 million a year? I mean, someone who's that important to not be willing. And I'm hoping the Bears are. If what we hear about Ben Johnson is true, that he wants high money, that that's the guy the Bears really want, I hope they pay him, because it's really silly to be so penny wise and pound foolish with.
Well, you're going to have to. It's the going rate. It's just like if you look at the Bears during the days of Jim Finks and Jerry Venisi, when you didn't have to pay and you didn't want to pay, so you didn't pay. Nowadays, that all that thinking is caught up to the NFL. You better be willing to pay these players what they're demanding or what their agents are coming in and saying, this is what we want. And when you look at DJ Moore and Montez Sweat, listen, man, it's part of the landscape of the Bears right now in terms of the players. If Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles sit in that interview and they say, this is the guy we want, listen, don't let him out of the building. Don't let him leave here. Then listen, you start negotiating that salary that is going to bring you guys to that common ground. I'm not going to listen to a guy and he's going to tell me what he wants as a salary and it's unnegotiable. That's not what I'm hiring. I'm hiring a guy because your skill set tells me that you have the capabilities of being a quality head coach. And yeah, if you perform up to the level of expectations, what we're offering you, then yeah, you're going to make that salary and you'll probably double it on your next contract. But in order to have a guy walk in the building and tell me, yeah, this is what I require, or don't enter that, thank you for coming and I appreciate it. I'm not gonna bow down to a guy's demands. I'm going to listen to what he has to offer me. I'm going to listen to what he has to say about, the football team development. And then listen, we'll negotiate a salary after that.
It's being suggested the Bears don't have it in them to hire a coach with a strong personality. You agree with that? Is that a fair assessment?
I don't agree with that. I think Kevin Warren has changed all of the previous 100 and whatever year thinking of the Bears hiring process. When he was brought aboard, he was brought to figure out the stadium details and turn this thing into a winner. And I do believe that he's been around enough coaches, the guys that have been successful and guys that haven't been successful. There's not a big difference between Big Ten coaches and NFL coaches. So I think that everything new is on the table with Kevin Warren than from what we've seen over the last 100 years.
Do you have a favorite? Who do you want to be the next head coach?
last week, in the last week of the season, I saw Kyler Gordon at the podium. I saw Justin Fields at the podium, and I listened to Ryan Poles' speech at the end of the season. And the one word in common that they all brought up was accountability. And so if guys are bringing that up either before the end of the season or after the season, it must be a major issue inside the locker room if they're bringing it up. So if I'm interviewing Danny Mack for the head coaching job of Ball State University, I'm going to look at what you're telling me is and how you're going to hold guys accountable inside the weight room, on the practice field. What is your training camp routine, and what are you going to do to get this thing turned around? There's a guys out there in that list of interviews that they're doing that I like, but because I don't have eye-to-eye contact, I can't hear how they're listening, they're answering the questions that are asked of them. It's hard for me to set my sights, just tell you one name right now who I got to have, because I'm not hearing what's coming out of them. If I was sitting in that room and hearing what's coming out of them, I would have a better indicator.
That's far too analytical. That's far too cerebral, Tom. That's, what? Come on. But that's an educated, that's a mature response. I wanted the meatball in you. I really wanted you to access. I don't know what answer I would have made me happy. A Singletary, maybe, because I hear that too. But that's a very good answer, and it's probably the right answer.
But listen, man, when you're talking about the salaries that these guys are demanding, or what the Bears need to do in the next 3 years with Caleb's rookie contract and Roma Dunze, you need to tell me. You need to convince me what you're going to do, and don't come to the podium with all these mantras of the different. What your print. I want to know what you're going to do to make that, defense provide more sacks. What are you going to do on the offensive line to prevent sacks? What are you going to do for Caleb Williams in the next 3 years to turn him into a division-winning quarterback when you don't know the future of Jared Goff? He's getting up there in age. You don't know what Minnesota's going to do. And, Jordan Love, I think the jury is still out on him. So I honestly, it's hard for me to sit here and pick one guy when I don't get a chance to see them eyeball to eyeball.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody on the list you absolutely don't need to see eyeball to eyeball and say, no, don't get that guy in here. He's the wrong guy. Come on, Thayer.
Well, no, I mean, listen, I would be a little apprehensive of a guy that's in his mid-70s, and that's one guy in Pete Carroll. And I'm not saying, listen, man, that guy's got tons of experience. He's been successful in college and the NFL level. But I know the energy requirement for these coaches, and when you're talking about 16-hour days for 7 months, I just have a hard time, saying, okay, is there not someone out there that really caught my attention in this whole coaching search?
Mm-hmm. I also would have a tough time hiring a guy in his 70s, maybe even 60s, now that we know what it's like to be 63 years old. 16-hour days, 18-hour days, you can keep them. All right, last thing I want to ask you, Tom, is about the players. I know that you were more than content with the quarterback this year. I heard a lot of the broadcasts, especially the last month of the season. You're not pinning 5 and 12 on Caleb Williams like some others have, and I need to see more of him. I'm not as content with him as you are, but if you're going to look at the guys who either underachieved or overachieved this year, the guys who really caught on. I love Kyler Gordon defensively.
Yeah.
Offensively, I was very impressed again this year with DJ Moore, despite a little hiccup with some PR issues early on. On the negative side, I need way more out of Montez Sweat. I know he was hurt, but I need way more out of him. And where in the world is Cole Kmet?
That's a coaching thing. Listen, Dan, and so I was going to bring up the Bears' lack of scoring in the first quarter and then the heroics by Caleb in the fourth quarter. wow, you sit there and look at this rookie quarterback, what he's getting these guys back in the game in the fourth quarter. But where in the heck is Cole Kmet in the first quarter? And don't tell me that, yeah, we had him involved in the play, but they took him out of the play. I don't buy that. I know that the tight end sometimes is an uncoverable immediate decision for a quarterback. If you have him on the line of scrimmage, he's going to run better than a linebacker. If you have him stretched off the line of scrimmage or coming out of the backfield, he doesn't match up size-wise with the defensive back. And if you're talking about what's the one element that can get me into scoring position the quickest in the first quarter, it's going to be Caleb and Cole. That is going to be my route to scoring in the first quarter. If you go back to the San Francisco game, it might have been the 5th, 6th play of the game, and you look at the crossing route by Kittle. It's a huge play, may have been the biggest play of the game. He's got 5 catches for, I think, 126 yards. Cole Kmet is every bit as usable as any tight end in the NFL. And so, to me, it's not a Cole issue. It was a coaching issue. And that's what I was talking about that till I was blue in my face, that where is Cole Kmet? He's a first quarter guy that can get Caleb calmly, involved in this game and confidently.
Defensively, who are the guys who earned your love, and which is the guy who needs to bring it next level next year?
I love TJ Edwards. The guy's legit. When he has a chance to hit somebody, he brings it. I like to see more out of Gervon Dexter, but I'm going to widen his responsibilities. He's not only going to be a 3-technique defensive tackle, he's going to give me a little bit more edge opportunities outside. I need to have that guy that's a 3-technique career defensive tackle that gets this off defense going, if that's what the future of this defense is. I need to see Austin Booker take a huge leap in his second year. Not just that mother may I take a big step forward. No, it's let me take a huge step forward, because I think that he's got the instincts and the innate ability to rush the passer, but he's got to be given those 3rd and long opportunities. Like you said, I love Kyler Gordon. I think Tyreek Stevenson is the most physical defensive back they have, and someone needs to capture his attention in the games where he's only playing the football game. He's not thinking out of bounds. He's not thinking out of the line of responsibility. And, I guess I want to see improvement of the superstars like Jalen and Montez Sweat. I need to see those guys, take the next step in leadership and, play on the field, in leadership in the locker room, all the types of things that you need to see out of, $100 million and $70 million guys.
Yeah, heavy is the head that wears the crown. People always, how come you're always so tough on Bears pass rushers, McNeil? Because they're getting paid the most. Sorry if I expect them to hit the quarterback more than they have been. Tom, always fun catching up. I want to wish you all the best this week. Enjoy your new piece of titanium. It's always fun to get new body parts. I hope all goes well. And if you need advice, I'm a very quick call away.
Well, Danny Mac, this is what's going to get me through. Is I have two of my favorite radio personalities of all time, Danny Mac and Kevin Matthews. So nice. I have Kevin Matthews' new book, but I've been reading this bits and pieces, looking at the pictures. First time I ever saw the letter by the defensive players on behalf of Buddy Ryan, which I think was great to see. But this is going to get me through the rehabilitation of my knee surgery.
Awesome. I've done my job then. Tom, thanks so much.
You know what, though? You could have smiled on the cover.
Not everyone, but several have suggested that. You know why I didn't? I know the content. What's inside is not always very happy.
Yeah, I understand that, but, the smiling Danny Mac, people are going to pick, it's always fun to see you smile.
Okay. Maybe the next one.
There you go.
I bear a smile. Thanks, Tom. Take care, man.
All right, see you, buddy.
Tom Thayer, many years in the Bears radio booth and a member of the 85 Super Bowl champs. I want to thank Randy Merkin, who gets me all the guests for the Danny Mac podcast. Adam Delavitt is the big boss at the Bet Rivers Podcast Network. Sam Michael is my executive producer. Thanks to Alex Pastor and Troy Mocker. More football down the road. I'm Dan McNeil.